A wedding day is supposed to be filled with love, joy, and new beginnings. But in a grand ballroom in Chicago, a celebration turned into chaos when a grandmother uncovered a dark truth. The bride wasn't there to build a family. She was there to destroy it. This is the story of how love, courage, and the bond of family exposed a shocking betrayal, and how one little boy's life was saved just in time. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button. Share with friends and comment where you're watching from. My name is Gloria, and today I want to tell you something that happened in my family. It is not just a story of a wedding or of family gatherings. It is a story about love, betrayal, courage, and how sometimes the people we trust the most can hurt us in ways we never imagined. I share this with you because I believe someone out there may need to hear it. Maybe you will see your own reflection in it. Maybe it will warn you, or maybe it will remind you of what truly matters in life. I live in Chicago, a city filled with noise, busy streets, and tall buildings that almost scrape the sky. Some people say Chicago is tough, that life here makes you strong. But behind all the noise and the tall glass towers, there are families like mine, living simple lives, filled with love, laughter, and sometimes storms we never asked for. For me, my family has always been my greatest treasure. I am a grandmother now, and when you reach my age, you start to see life differently. You don't care so much about riches or material things. What matters most is family, the people you love and protect with all your heart. My grandson Ethan is the center of my world. He is 7 years old, with bright eyes that shine like the sun on Lake Michigan. He has this laugh, so innocent and pure, that no matter how heavy your day feels, it can lift you up instantly. But Ethan carries something with him that makes me worry every single day. A severe shrimp allergy. Most people hear allergy and think of a simple rash or maybe a cough, but Ethan's condition is life-threatening. Just a tiny bite, even a trace, could close his throat and steal his breath away. I cannot count how many nights I lay awake, praying to God to keep him safe in a world that sometimes does not understand the seriousness of such things. Because of this, I became like a hawk when it came to Ethan's food. At restaurants, I would question the waiters like a detective, making sure no seafood ever touched his plate. At school, I would call his teachers and remind them again and again. Even at family barbecues, I would hover around the kitchen, double-checking every dish. Some people thought I was overreacting, but I didn't care. This was my grandson's life we were talking about. Ethan's mother passed away when he was still a toddler. Losing her left a hole in all of our hearts, but none bigger than in my son Adam's. He loved his wife dearly, and when she died, I saw my son become a shadow of himself. He tried to be strong for Ethan, but grief is heavy. Sometimes, he would sit quietly in the corner of my living room, staring at nothing, as Ethan played at his feet. My heart broke for him. I wished I could carry his pain for him, but all I could do was be there. That was when Sarah became even more important in our lives. Sarah is not my daughter by blood. She is adopted. But you know what? Blood doesn't make family. Love does. And Sarah has always been filled with love. She stepped into Ethan's life like an angel. She helped care for him when Adam was too broken to stand. She would pack his school lunches, making sure every single thing was safe. She would hold him at night when he missed his mother. She would teach him little things like how to draw a house or how to tie his shoelaces. To Ethan, she wasn't just Aunt Sarah. She became almost like a second mother. I used to watch them together, and sometimes tears would fill my eyes. God works in mysterious ways. Maybe Sarah was meant to be with us for this very reason, to help raise Ethan with the love he needed. Then came Rachel. Adam met Rachel through work. She was beautiful, no doubt about it. She had long dark hair that shone under the light and a smile that seemed to charm everyone. She spoke with confidence, and people seemed drawn to her. When Adam first brought her home, I tried to open my heart to her. After all, my son deserved happiness. He had been through so much pain, and I wanted him to find love again. I prayed that Rachel would be the one to bring joy back into his life. But from the very beginning, something about Rachel unsettled me. It wasn't anything obvious. It was more in the small things. The way she looked at Ethan, not with warmth but with a sort of distance. As if he were a burden she had to tolerate. She would smile at him, but the smile never reached her eyes. When Ethan would try to show her his drawings, she would pat his head politely, but her voice would be flat, uninterested. I told myself maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was being too protective of Ethan. Sometimes when you love someone so much, you become suspicious of anyone who comes close. So I tried to push those thoughts away. I wanted to give Rachel a chance. But Ethan felt it too. He would cling to Sarah whenever Rachel visited. Once he whispered to me, "Grandma, I don't like her." I hushed him, telling him not to be rude, but deep inside, his words echoed my own feelings. Children, you see, sometimes see truths that adults ignore. As months went by, Adam grew closer and closer to Rachel. He looked happier, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. When he announced their engagement, everyone clapped and cheered. I forced a smile, though my stomach twisted with unease. The wedding was planned for a grand hotel ballroom in downtown Chicago. It was the kind of place you see in magazines. Shining chandeliers hung from the ceiling, marble floors gleamed underfoot, and tables were decorated with white linens and golden plates. Adam wanted it to be a celebration of love and new beginnings. He wanted the world to see that he was moving forward, that his story was not over. Sarah helped with many of the preparations. She was thoughtful as always, making sure Ethan's allergy was taken seriously. She spoke to the hotel staff, explained his condition in detail, and arranged for a special meal just for him. Watching her do that gave me some peace of mind, but still, the unease never fully left my heart. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with both joy and tension. Guests arrived from out of town, laughter filled the house, and everyone spoke excitedly about dresses, flowers, and music. But late at night, when the house grew quiet, Ethan would ask me questions that pierced my heart. "Grandma," he said once, his small voice trembling, "will Dad still love me the same after he marries Rachel?" I hugged him tightly and whispered, "Of course, sweetheart. You will always be your dad's first love." But deep inside I worried too. Adam was blinded by Rachel's charm. He couldn't see the stiffness in her smiles or the way she brushed Ethan aside. Once, at a family dinner, Ethan proudly showed her a drawing of a house he had made. Rachel looked at it for just a second, forced a smile and said, "That's nice, Ethan." Then she set it aside and turned the conversation back to herself. I caught the disappointment in Ethan's eyes, and my heart ached. But as a mother, I wanted to support Adam. No parent wants to crush their child's happiness. So I stayed quiet. The night before the wedding, I could not sleep. I paced around my kitchen, making tea, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The city lights blinked in the distance, and my reflection stared back at me from the window. I whispered a prayer into the night air. "Lord, please protect my family tomorrow. Please keep Ethan safe. Please guide Adam's heart. Don't let us walk blindly into danger." The morning of the wedding was beautiful. The sun shone brightly, the air crisp with the freshness of early autumn. The hotel ballroom was transformed into something out of a dream. Roses lined the aisles, candles flickered on every table, and soft jazz music filled the space. Guests arrived in elegant clothes, laughter echoing through the room. Adam looked so handsome in his navy blue suit, his face glowing with excitement. Rachel walked in wearing a gown that sparkled under the lights, every step making her look like a queen. Everyone clapped and cheered, and for a moment it looked like a fairy tale. But as I sat there, holding Ethan's small hand in mine, I couldn't shake the feeling in my chest. He sat quietly beside me, his little bow tie slightly crooked, his eyes darting nervously around the room. On his other side, Sarah leaned down and whispered something to him, making him smile a little. She squeezed his shoulder as if to say, "Don't worry, I'm here." I told myself again and again, "Everything will be fine. This is a day of joy, not fear." But deep inside I knew something was coming. I didn't know what, but I felt it in my bones. That unease I carried for months was about to become a storm that would shake the very foundation of our family. And that was only the beginning. The morning of Adam's wedding felt like a dream painted in gold. The sky above Chicago was clear, with the autumn sun pouring down gently, giving the whole city a soft, glowing light. I woke up early, unable to sleep much, my heart thumping with a mix of joy and worry. Weddings are supposed to be happy occasions, and as Adam's mother, I wanted so badly to feel only happiness. But in the deepest corner of my heart, that shadow of unease lingered. I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my dress, smoothing the wrinkles, and staring at the woman staring back at me. My hair was silver now, my hands not as strong as they once were, but my heart was steady. I whispered to myself, "Gloria, today you must be strong. Today is about Adam. Don't let your worries ruin his moment." Sarah came into my room just then, looking beautiful in a soft blue gown. She smiled at me, her kindness radiating the way it always did. "You look lovely, Mom," she said, giving me a small hug. I smiled back at her, but my first words were, "Did you check Ethan's lunchbox?" She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Of course I did. Don't worry, everything is safe. And the hotel staff has his special meal ready, separate from everything else. I went over it with them again this morning." Hearing her words brought me some peace. Sarah always knew how to soothe my anxious heart, especially when it came to Ethan. She had become his guardian angel in so many ways, and I don't know what I would do without her. Soon the house was filled with movement. Adam arrived looking so handsome in his navy blue suit, his face glowing with nervous excitement. Ethan, in his little black bow tie and suspenders, ran to him, and Adam scooped him up in his arms. For a moment, all my worries faded when I saw father and son laughing together. "Are you ready for your big day?" I asked Adam, holding his arm for a moment. He grinned. "I've been ready for a long time, Mom. Rachel is. She's everything I prayed for. She's brought light back into my life." I forced a smile, though my chest tightened. I wanted so badly to believe him, to share in his joy, but something about Rachel had never felt right to me. Still, as his mother, I wanted to support him. So I patted his arm and said softly, "Then may God bless this union." We all headed to the hotel together, the drive filled with laughter and the sound of Ethan's curious little questions. The city stretched out around us, tall buildings glinting in the sun, busy streets filled with people, the lake sparkling like glass in the distance. Chicago was alive that morning, as if it too was celebrating. When we arrived at the hotel, my breath caught. The ballroom was stunning. White roses lined the aisle, chandeliers glistened overhead, and soft music floated through the air. Guests were arriving in elegant dresses and sharp suits, their voices blending into a hum of excitement. Adam's friends clapped him on the back. His cousins hugged him tightly, and everywhere I looked there was joy. Rachel appeared soon after, wearing a gown that shimmered like something out of a fairy tale. She looked beautiful, radiant even, and when she walked into the room, all eyes turned toward her. People whispered about how lucky Adam was, about how perfect she looked. I wanted to feel the same awe, but when her eyes briefly met mine, I felt a chill run down my spine. There was something in her smile that felt too polished, too practiced. Still, I told myself to push those thoughts away. This was Adam's day, and I would not let my doubts poison it. The ceremony itself was lovely. The pastor spoke words of love and commitment, Adam and Rachel exchanged vows, and guests dabbed tears from their eyes. Ethan sat quietly beside me during the ceremony, swinging his legs nervously, clutching my hand. When Adam and Rachel kissed as husband and wife, the ballroom erupted in cheers. Ethan clapped softly, though his face was unreadable. I kissed the top of his head and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything will be all right." After the ceremony, the ballroom was transformed for the reception. Tables were set with golden plates and crystal glasses, candles flickering gently in the dimmed light. Music filled the air as guests laughed and chatted, toasting the new couple. Adam beamed with joy, Rachel basked in the attention, and for a while everything seemed peaceful. But then the shadows began to creep in. Dinner was being served. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved around the room, carrying trays of steaming plates. I watched carefully as Ethan's special meal was brought out, a simple dish prepared without any risk of shrimp or seafood. Sarah leaned over to double-check, whispering to the waiter, "This is for Ethan, right? No shrimp, no seafood." The waiter nodded quickly. I relaxed a little, though my eyes never left Ethan. He was chattering away to Sarah, his little fork clinking against the plate. Around us, the noise of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. Another waiter approached the table, holding a small plate of shrimp appetizers. He stopped beside Ethan's chair, leaned down, and placed it right in front of him. "Special request for the young boy," the waiter said politely. My heart nearly stopped. I shot up from my chair so fast it nearly toppled over. "No! Take that away!" I cried, my voice sharp and trembling. Ethan froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, his wide eyes staring at the shrimp. Sarah immediately pulled the plate away, her face pale, her hands shaking. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice breaking with fear. The waiter looked startled. I'm sorry, ma'am. I received a note. It said the boy wanted shrimp added to his meal. I thought it was unusual, but it was signed." "Signed?" Sarah's voice was sharp, her protective instinct blazing. "By who?" The waiter fumbled in his pocket and pulled out a folded note. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words were simple, written in neat handwriting. "Please make sure the little boy gets a plate of shrimp with his meal. He asked for it specially. Signed, Rachel." For a moment the whole world seemed to spin. I clutched the note, staring at it in disbelief. My chest felt tight, my throat dry, as though the air itself had been stolen from me. Sarah's face turned pale, her eyes wide with fury. "This has to be a mistake," she whispered, though her voice shook. But deep in my heart I knew it was not. I looked up, scanning the room, my eyes landing on Rachel. She was laughing, sipping champagne, her face glowing under the lights. She looked like the perfect bride, but all I could see was the shadow behind her smile. The waiter, sensing the tension, stammered, "I didn't mean any harm, ma'am. I just followed the instructions I was given." I forced myself to breathe, my hands gripping the table to steady myself. "You did nothing wrong," I said softly. "But please never bring shrimp near this child again. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied quickly, bowing his head. Ethan was staring up at me, his little face pale with fear. "Grandma," he whispered, "why did they give me shrimp? You said I can't eat it." I knelt beside him, hugging him tightly, my heart aching. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you." But as I held him close, my mind was racing. Who had written that note? Was it really Rachel? Or was someone trying to frame her? And if it was Rachel, what did that mean for my son, for Ethan, for all of us? The laughter and music in the ballroom suddenly felt distant, hollow. I glanced again at Rachel, and this time I caught something in her eyes. For just a split second, as she looked in our direction, her smile flickered. Not a smile of joy, but something colder. Something that made my stomach twist. I knew then that this was not over. The wedding may have been filled with flowers and music, but underneath it, something dark was brewing. And I, as a mother and grandmother, had no choice but to stand in the middle of it. Because this was not just a celebration anymore. This was a battle, for truth, for safety, for love. And it was only just beginning. The ballroom, once filled with music and laughter, suddenly felt like a cage closing in around me. I sat frozen for a moment, the folded note still trembling in my hand, while the golden lights of the chandeliers above seemed almost too bright, too sharp. Around us, the guests continued eating, drinking, and talking, unaware that something terrible had just brushed past my family like a shadow in the night. I couldn't take my eyes off Rachel. She was still smiling, chatting with guests at another table, sipping her champagne like a woman without a care in the world. The note in my hand, with her name neatly signed at the bottom, burned against my palm like fire. Sarah leaned closer to me, her face pale. "Mom, what do we do?" she whispered. Her voice shook, but her eyes were sharp, fierce, like a lioness ready to protect. I swallowed hard. "We can't stay quiet," I said softly. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was low, steady, but heavy with the weight of what I knew I had to do. Ethan sat between us, wide-eyed, his little hands fidgeting with his fork. "Grandma," he whispered, "why would somebody want me to eat shrimp? Don't they know it makes me sick?" His words stabbed through me like knives. How could I explain this to a child? How could I tell him that someone in this very room, someone he was supposed to trust, may have just tried to harm him? I squeezed his hand and kissed the top of his head. "You're safe, sweetheart. I won't let anything happen to you." But my heart was racing. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky, and I raised my voice just enough to catch people's attention. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. Conversations faltered, laughter faded, and dozens of eyes turned toward me. Adam, who was across the room talking to some relatives, looked over in surprise. "Mom," he called. I took a deep breath. My hands shook as I held up the folded note. "I need everyone to stop for a moment. Something has just happened, and it cannot be ignored." The room fell silent. Only the soft hum of the band playing in the background remained, and even that felt out of place now. Rachel's head turned toward me, her perfect smile faltering just slightly. She tilted her head, feigning curiosity. "Gloria, is something wrong?" she asked sweetly, her voice smooth like honey, but I no longer trusted a single drop of it. I lifted the note. "A waiter just tried to serve shrimp to my grandson." "Shrimp?" My voice cracked with emotion, and I pressed on louder now. "Everyone here knows that Ethan has a deadly allergy to it. Just one bite could have killed him." Gasps echoed around the room. Heads turned toward Ethan, who was staring down at his plate, his little shoulders hunched. Adam frowned, stepping closer. "What? That's impossible. We made special arrangements for Ethan's food." "Yes, we did," I said firmly, my eyes locking on Rachel. "But this waiter was handed a note. A note instructing him to serve shrimp to my grandson. And the note was signed." My voice faltered, my throat dry, but I forced the words out. "By Rachel." The room erupted into murmurs. Guests whispered, their eyes darting between Rachel and me. Rachel's face went pale for the briefest moment before she quickly forced a laugh, shaking her head. "Gloria, this must be some kind of misunderstanding," she said smoothly. "Why would I ever do something like that?" Sarah shot up from her chair, her voice sharp. "Don't you dare deny this, Rachel. You've never cared about Ethan. I've seen it in your eyes since the first day you met him. He wasn't part of your perfect picture, was he? You wanted Adam, but not his son." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by gasps and the clinking of glasses as someone set their drink down too hard. Rachel's smile grew tighter, her voice still calm but with a hint of steel underneath. "Sarah, I know you've never liked me. But accusing me of trying to harm a child, that's beyond cruel. You're twisting things because you can't stand the fact that Adam chose me." Adam stepped forward, his face pale, his eyes wide. "Rachel, tell me this isn't true." Rachel reached for his hand, her eyes glistening as if tears were forming. "Of course it's not true, Adam. You know me. You know I love you. Why would I ever hurt your son? This is insane." I held the note up higher. "Then explain this," I said, my voice steady now. "Explain why your name is written here." Rachel's eyes flicked to the note for just a second before she laughed again, though this time it sounded brittle. "Anyone could have written that. Anyone could have forged my name. This is your wedding day, Adam, our wedding day, and they're trying to ruin it." She turned, gesturing toward me and Sarah. "Can't you see? They don't want us to be happy. For a moment, Adam stood frozen, torn between the woman he loved and the family he trusted. I could see the war inside him, the confusion, the fear. My heart ached for him, but I couldn't back down now. Then, from across the room, a voice trembled through the silence. "It's true." Every head turned. Emily, Rachel's younger sister, stood near the edge of the ballroom, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. She looked pale, her eyes brimming with tears. "It's true," she repeated, louder this time. Rachel's head snapped toward her sister. "Emily, what are you talking about?" she hissed, her voice sharp and desperate. Emily's lip quivered as she took a shaky step forward. "She told me to do it. Rachel told me to write the note and give it to the waiter. She said Ethan needed to be out of the way. She said he was ruining her future with Adam." The ballroom erupted into chaos. Gasps, shouts, voices rising all at once. Adam staggered back as if someone had struck him. "Rachel," he whispered, his face crumbling. Rachel's mask slipped. For the first time that day, her polished smile vanished, and her eyes blazed with fury. "You stupid girl," she snapped at Emily, her voice dripping with venom. "You weren't supposed to say anything." The room fell silent again, the truth laid bare in the open. Adam stared at Rachel as though he no longer recognized her. You tried to kill my son." His voice cracked, heavy with disbelief and heartbreak. Rachel reached for him desperately. "Adam, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. I wanted us to have a fresh start. I wanted you to myself. I didn't mean." Adam jerked his hand away. His face twisted in grief and anger. "You didn't mean to. You could have killed him, Rachel. My son, my only son." Tears finally spilled down Emily's cheeks as she sobbed. "I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. She pressured me, said it was harmless. I didn't think." But no one was listening to her anymore. All eyes were on Rachel, who now stood exposed in front of everyone. Guests whispered, shaking their heads, some covering their mouths in shock. I stepped closer to Adam, resting a trembling hand on his arm. "Son, do you see now?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "Do you see who she really is?" Adam's chest rose and fell rapidly. His eyes locked on Rachel as though trying to reconcile the woman he thought he loved with the monster standing before him. Finally, his voice broke, raw with pain. "Get out," he said. Rachel's eyes widened. "Adam, please. Get out," he roared, his voice echoing through the ballroom. Two security guards, alerted by the commotion, stepped forward. Rachel's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for sympathy, for someone to defend her. But all she saw were cold, horrified stares. She tried to pull free as the guards took her arms. "You'll regret this, Adam. You'll all regret this," she shouted, her voice shrill and venomous, before she was dragged out of the ballroom. The doors closed behind her, and a heavy silence settled over the room. Adam stood frozen, his face pale, his eyes glazed with shock. Sarah stepped forward, wrapping her arms around Ethan protectively, whispering soothing words into his ear. I moved closer to Adam, my own heart breaking as I saw my son's world collapse in front of me. The wedding that had begun with roses and vows had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. And though Rachel was gone, the damage she left behind was deep. I have lived a long life, long enough to see joy, sorrow, births, weddings, and even funerals. But never in all my years did I imagine that my family would be tested in such a way, right in the middle of a wedding ceremony that was supposed to bring us all closer together. That day in the Grand Chicago Hotel ballroom, everything I had been fearing finally came to light. When the chaos first began, time seemed to slow down. I could still hear the jazz music echoing faintly from the speakers, the scent of roses and polished wood filling the air. Guests sat frozen at their tables, their laughter from moments earlier silenced, replaced with shocked gasps and whispers. Rachel, standing in her shimmering white gown, looked less like a bride and more like a statue. Her face pale, her eyes flashing with anger then fear. Adam stood beside her, his confusion plain for everyone to see. But at the center of it all was Ethan, my sweet 7-year-old grandson, who sat trembling with tears streaming down his cheeks. Sarah held him tightly in her arms, her own body shaking, as if she were the only shield standing between him and danger. And in many ways she was. The Reverend Father who had been leading the ceremony placed his hands firmly on the podium, his voice steady yet stern. "This ceremony cannot continue," he declared, his words echoing through the hall. "Not when the truth has been revealed." Gasps spread through the crowd. Family members leaned toward one another, whispering nervously. Some guests stood up ready to leave, but most sat rooted in their chairs, their eyes wide, waiting for what would happen next. Rachel's composure cracked like thin glass under pressure. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, her voice trembling. "This is our wedding day, Adam. Don't let them ruin it." Her words sliced through the air, but no one dared to respond. Adam stared at her, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. His eyes darted between Rachel, Sarah, Ethan, and me. I could see the battle raging inside him, the battle between the love he thought he had found and the truth that was forcing its way to the surface. "Adam," Sarah said softly but firmly, still holding Ethan close. Her voice carried across the silence. "You need to listen to me. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about your son's life." Rachel tried to harm him. Rachel's eyes widened, and she let out a laugh that was sharp and hollow. "Are you serious? You're going to believe this nonsense?" But there was no humor in her laugh. It was a laugh of desperation, of someone who felt the ground crumbling beneath her feet. I stood then, though my legs trembled. "I saw it with my own eyes," I said, my voice breaking. "The shrimp on his plate, the way Rachel pushed it toward him. You all know Ethan's allergy. You all know what even one bite could have done. My grandson could have died today." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Faces turned toward Rachel, some with disbelief, others with suspicion. The air felt heavy, pressing down on all of us. Rachel shook her head violently. "No, that's not true. I would never." But her voice faltered, and her hands trembled as she clutched her bouquet so tightly that the flowers bent and petals began to fall to the floor. Adam took a slow step away from her. His jaw tightened, his face pale. "Rachel," he whispered, almost as if he was afraid to hear the answer. "Tell me the truth. Did you put that food in front of Ethan?" Rachel's lips quivered, but no words came out. Her silence was louder than any confession. Ethan buried his face in Sarah's shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs. I wanted to run to him, to scoop him into my arms and never let go. But I stayed where I was, my heart pounding in my chest, because I needed Adam to see the truth with his own eyes. The Reverend Father raised his hand, his expression sorrowful but unyielding. "There can be no union built on deception and harm. This marriage cannot take place today." Rachel's face twisted with rage. She dropped the bouquet to the floor, the sound of stems snapping like tiny bones breaking. "You're all against me," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "From the very beginning, none of you wanted me here. You poisoned Adam against me, and now you're using this child as your excuse." Her words sent a chill down my spine. I could see it now, clearer than ever. The darkness behind her beauty, the bitterness she had hidden beneath smiles and kind gestures. I had felt uneasy about her from the start, but I had pushed those feelings aside for Adam's happiness. Now I realized that unease had been my soul warning me of danger. Adam's voice broke through my thoughts. "Rachel," he said, his tone trembling but resolute. "If you loved me, you would have loved my son. You knew he is the most important part of my life. If you truly wanted to be part of this family, you would have protected him, not endangered him." Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the tears of regret or sorrow. They were tears of anger, of a plan unraveling before her. "I did love you," she spat. "But you were never really mine. Your son, your family, they always stood in the way. You would never have chosen me fully." The guests gasped again. Some mothers pulled their children closer. Some fathers shook their heads in disbelief. The truth had been spoken out loud, leaving no room for denial. For the first time that day, I felt Adam truly see her. His shoulders slumped, as though a heavy curtain had been pulled away, revealing the truth he had been blind to for so long. He looked at Ethan, then at Sarah, and finally at me. His eyes were filled with pain but also with clarity. "I can't do this," he said. His voice was soft but firm, and it carried through the hall like a final verdict. "This wedding is over." Rachel's face twisted into a mask of fury. She lunged forward, her hands reaching out as if to grab Adam, but the Reverend Father and two guests quickly stepped between them. "Enough," the Reverend said firmly. "This ends now." Rachel let out a cry, half scream, half sob, and turned storming down the aisle. Her gown brushed against the floor like a wave crashing against rocks, and the doors slammed shut behind her with a thunderous echo. Silence fell over the ballroom, heavy and suffocating. No one moved for a long moment. Then, slowly, the murmurs began again. Some guests stood and left quietly, shaking their heads, while others stayed, unsure what to do next. The wedding that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a scene of heartbreak and revelation. Adam stood motionless, his head bowed. I walked toward him, my old legs unsteady, but my determination strong. When I reached him, I placed my hand on his arm. "Son," I whispered, "you made the right choice." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, I almost lost everything today. I almost let her into our lives." I squeezed his arm gently. "But you didn't. You saw the truth in time. That's what matters now." Sarah approached then, still holding Ethan, who had finally calmed down enough to lift his head. His face was blotchy from crying, but when he saw his father, he reached out his small arms. "Daddy," he whispered. Adam took him gently from Sarah's arms and held him close, burying his face in Ethan's hair. "I'm so sorry, buddy," he said, his voice breaking. "I promise you, I'll never let anyone hurt you again." I stood there, watching them, my heart swelling with both sorrow and relief. This day had torn us apart, but it had also shown us the strength of our bond. We had faced darkness, but we had not been defeated by it. Later, as guests trickled out and the hotel staff began quietly clearing the room, the four of us, Adam, Ethan, Sarah, and I, sat together at one of the tables. The candles flickered, their soft light casting gentle shadows on our faces. "Where do we go from here?" Adam asked quietly, staring at the tablecloth. Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "We go forward together. That's all we can do." He nodded. "Families survive storms because they hold on to each other. That's what we'll do. We'll heal and we'll keep Ethan safe. That's all that matters." Ethan leaned against his father, his small voice breaking the silence. "Daddy, are you still sad?" Adam kissed the top of his head. "Not anymore, son. 'Cause I still have you. And I still have our family." And in that moment, I knew the storm had finally passed. But what none of us realized then was that Rachel was not finished with us. Not yet. The days after the wedding were some of the hardest we had ever faced as a family. The grand ballroom in downtown Chicago, once decorated with roses and filled with music, had turned into a memory we all wished we could forget. Adam's cancelled vows and Rachel's furious departure were still fresh in our minds. But life, I've learned, does not stop for broken hearts. It moves forward even when you are still standing in the wreckage of what could have been. In the days that followed, Adam stayed mostly quiet. He went through the motions, waking up, making coffee, going to work, but the spark in his eyes was gone. The guilt of almost marrying someone who had tried to harm his son weighed heavily on him. Sometimes late at night, I would hear him pacing in his room, whispering prayers I couldn't quite make out. I understood his pain. Love can blind us, make us see what we want instead of what truly is. Adam had wanted happiness so badly that he ignored the unease around him. And though I was proud of him for finding the courage to stop the wedding, I also knew it left him feeling like a man who had failed his family. Sarah, on the other hand, became the anchor holding us all steady. She stayed close to Ethan, making him laugh when he was sad, helping him draw pictures of superheroes and telling him bedtime stories about courage and kindness. She also checked in on Adam gently, reminding him that he was still a good father, still loved, and still the man Ethan looked up to. And then there was Ethan himself. My sweet boy. The first few days after the wedding, he clung to me more than usual. At night, he would crawl into my bed, his little arms wrapping around my waist. "Grandma," he whispered one night, "why didn't she like me? Did I do something wrong?" Those words cut through me like a knife. I pulled him close, stroking his hair. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. You are perfect just the way you are. Some people don't know how to love the right way, and that's not your fault. The problem was never you. It was her." He sniffled softly. But Daddy looked so sad. I kissed his forehead. "Daddy will heal. We all will. Because we have each other." It would take time, but I knew those words were true. Weeks passed, and slowly, the pain began to lift. Adam started spending more time with Ethan, taking him to the park, reading with him at night, and even cooking breakfast together on weekends. Sometimes I would hear them laughing in the kitchen, the sound filling the house with warmth I hadn't heard in a long time. One Saturday morning, as I watched them flip pancakes together, I realized something important. Rachel's betrayal had not broken us. It had strengthened us. It had forced Adam to open his eyes, forced all of us to hold tighter to each other. It had reminded us of what truly mattered. Family. Still, the shadow of Rachel lingered. She had disappeared after the wedding, but rumors swirled. A friend of Adam's claimed she had left Chicago, moving back to her hometown. Another person said she had been fired from her job. We didn't know for sure, and honestly we didn't want to. We only prayed she would stay far away from us. But sometimes in the quiet of the night I worried. I would replay her angry words in my head. "You were never really mine. Your family always stood in the way." That bitterness was not something that disappeared overnight. One evening, about 2 months after the wedding, something happened that showed me just how far we had come. It was Ethan's school play. He had been practicing for weeks, proudly telling us about his role as a tree in the background. "I get to wear a green shirt and wave my arms like branches," he laughed, showing us his little costume. On the night of the play, Adam, Sarah, and I all sat in the school auditorium, waiting eagerly. When Ethan walked on stage, his small body wrapped in green fabric, his face lit up with joy as he spotted us in the crowd. He waved excitedly and we waved back, cheering quietly. For 30 minutes, I watched him act, laugh, and shine on that stage. And I realized that was what life was about. Not grand weddings or fancy hotels, but simple moments of love and support. Ethan didn't care about Rachel. He cared that his family was there for him, cheering him on. After the play, we went to get ice cream together. Ethan sat at the table with chocolate smeared on his cheeks, telling us about how he remembered all his lines. Adam ruffled his hair, smiling more freely than I had seen in months. Sarah teased him gently, calling him the bravest little tree in Chicago. I sat back watching them, my heart swelling. The storm had passed. We had survived. And here we were, still standing, still loving. But before I end this story, I want to share one more moment, the true turning point for Adam. One night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Adam and I sat together on the porch, looking out at the city lights. The cool Chicago breeze rustled the trees, carrying with it the distant sounds of traffic. "Mom," Adam said quietly, "I need to thank you." I looked at him, surprised. "For what, son?" "For trusting your instincts. For seeing what I couldn't. If it wasn't for you and Sarah, I don't know what would have happened to Ethan. I almost let someone into our lives who could have destroyed us." His voice cracked, and he looked down at his hands. "I don't know how to forgive myself for that." I reached over, placing my hand on his. "Adam, listen to me. You did what mattered most. You chose your son. You stopped the wedding. You protected your family. That's what defines you, not your mistakes. We all get fooled sometimes, but it takes real strength to face the truth and change course. That's what you did. Tears filled his eyes, but he nodded. I just want to be the father Ethan deserves. I squeezed his hand. You already are. And in that moment, I saw some of the weight lift off his shoulders. Life after Rachel was not perfect, but it was real. It was filled with laughter, small joys, and the kind of love that endures even the darkest storms. Ethan grew stronger, braver, more confident. Sarah continued to be his anchor, his safe place. Adam began to heal, and I learned that sometimes the hardest trials are the ones that remind us of what we already have. Rachel may have left scars, but she did not win. Love won. Family won. And as long as we held on to each other, nothing could break us. When I look back on that day in the grand ballroom, I don't see just the chaos or the pain. I see the moment my family came together and refused to let darkness consume us. I see a father who chose his son, a sister who became a shield, a grandmother who followed her instincts, and a little boy whose courage reminded us all why love is worth fighting for. So if you're listening to this story, I want you to remember something. Trust your heart. Protect the ones you love. And never forget that family, in all its messy, imperfect beauty, is the strongest force we have in this world. Because in the end, love will always outshine the darkest of storms.